So, National Signing Day is coming up the first Wednesday of February, as always. That used to be the date. Now, of course, it's in December when 85 to 90% of the players sign, but still with roughly 10% of the players. Obviously, there's some gems out there. Somebody had asked, how late can someone sign? Last year, because of the dead period being extended and no campus visits because of COVID, and that continuing through the summer, I know that there were players, for example, JT Tuamalo, that signed at Ohio State. He didn't sign until the end of July, like days before training camp started. But based on what I'm finding out, it's back to an April 1st signing date in regards to when is the latest. That's the information I'm finding, at least. So
Yeah.
don't hold me to that for sure, but that's what I'm finding in regards to the last date that a player can sign for 2022 in football. It's a much different date for the rest of the collegiate sports for some reason, but probably has to do with roster management, which is a mess for these coaches.
Right.
So we've got a handful of players that are still on the board, and Oklahoma has a shot at getting.
Yeah, I would kind of start with the most likely. So there's been a lot of discussion about Gentry Williams, so the Oklahoma product, one of the best players in the state of Oklahoma, has still been committed to Oklahoma, has not decommitted, but obviously didn't sign on the early signing period. So I think really what his train of thought has been is he wanted to kind of get an understanding of what coaches that Oklahoma was going to bring in on the defensive side of the ball before he completely made a decision. So he's not wavered on his commitment to Oklahoma, even in the least. Riley and the USC tried to make a play. From what I've been told, he basically told them to kick rocks. Like he's not interested in going there. So he's not really taking any more visits. So I feel pretty strongly that Oklahoma is still going to be the play here. So much, just some of the people that I've heard and talked to have basically said it's not even an area of concern that anyone should even be thinking about. They had a meeting with him. The defensive coaches had a meeting with him last week. I'm hearing that he's coming in for an official visit this next weekend or here pretty soon. So would be completely surprised if he's not a Sooner. So obviously that would be super critical for Oklahoma in the defensive backfield, where Oklahoma's obviously, as you can see from some of the transfer guys, making some big changes in terms of kind of upgrading that talent pool within that area. But outside of that, there's three other guys that I've got on my radar that Oklahoma. There's probably some more, but I think these are three of the guys. So Josh Connolly is one, very very similar to the situation that you had mentioned with JT. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name because I'm sure I'll butcher it. But
It had been a while since I said it, and it didn't come out real well.
So he's a kid, a Seattle kid that has been not really super on Oklahoma's radar, but I think Oklahoma's got in there with him, had an incredibly positive visit, 5-star offensive lineman. But I think his recruitment is very similar in the fact that he's basically said he's not signing in February. It's going to be a March, maybe even deadline. To your point, the April 1st deadline. So it's almost one of those things. He's a 5-star kid. He's a guy that Oklahoma has a need just to kind of stockpile that talent on the offense and defensive line. So as an offensive lineman, he's a guy that Oklahoma is really, really excited about. However, if you have a kid that's not willing to come in until or make a decision until March or early April, he kind of holds you hostage to a certain extent. So but I do know that there's still mutual interest. And I think if you're a coaching staff, if you have a good feeling that that this kid is going to come, he's going to announce, he's going to commit to you, that maybe you feel a little bit better about it. But if your side is still kind of up in the air, maybe you go after someone else. But so he's another guy. Devon Campbell is another 5-star offensive lineman for really between Oklahoma and Texas. I mean, kind of similar situation, Mark, with Caleb Williams. I've heard that Campbell really likes Oklahoma and wants to be a Sooner, but I think he's battling some family and some people within his inner circle that would prefer him be at Texas. I think so. I think he's been a Texas lean for quite a while. Oklahoma's making some inroads, especially with and it's not really new staff because Bill Bean on the offensive side still been that same guy, but you've got the coaching that has been solidified all across the Oklahoma staff. So I think that's still helpful. I would still lean towards Texas for him, but I think Oklahoma's making some inroads and still in a pretty decent spot. And kind of one of the newer guys, Marcus Cavante Henry. He's a guy that new defensive line coach. Defensive end coach, I should say, Miguel Chavis has been really in on for Oklahoma. Had a tremendous visit this past weekend. He's a 4-star guy, linebacker. He has been previously committed to Michigan. Still has been a hard commit for Michigan for quite some time. Did not sign on National Signing Day, so he's a guy that I think Oklahoma feels really good about their chances with them. So, and I think the one thing, Mark, that you'd mentioned is the numbers. The numbers are interesting to know exactly where Oklahoma is from a transfer portal perspective, as well as a just a 2022 recruiting cycle perspective. So I had heard that Oklahoma, don't be surprised that Oklahoma bring in anywhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 35 kids in between the 2022 recruiting cycle and the transfer portal. Right now, they have 17 commitments for the 2022 cycle. They've got, I'm just counting them here, 9 commitments from the transfer portal. So you're getting close to that number that Oklahoma, that I was told that Oklahoma was trying to get to, 30 to 35. So it'll be interesting if there's any additional guys that Oklahoma goes after on the portal as well as the recruiting cycle. But I think those are the 4 guys that people would want to keep an eye on.
Quite a few questions coming in here into the live chat, but most of them addressed by Jason, and running down these various player profiles.